Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. Airing out my dirty laundry and hurting my family? That doesn't go unpunished. My ex wife thinks she can do whatever she wants to damage my family's reputation online just because we're rich. But I had enough and took my own revenge. I come from a wealthy family. For generations, we have been in the dairy industry, and currently, we have several farms across the US, and we are planning to branch out into other markets as well. The company was built by my great grandpa, and we're all proud to be the bearers of his legacy. Everything was good until my ex wife came along. Dating has always been hard for me because my family is well known. So often it turned out that women only dated me for my family's money. This made me very careful about the women I date, and I tried not to let them know anything about my family until I was absolutely sure of the relationship. I thought my ex wife was one of the good ones, but I was obviously wrong. After 2 years of dating, we decided to get married. She only met my family after we got engaged, and in my opinion, she handled the situation quite well. I told her that she has to sign a prenup before the wedding, and she said she understood and agreed to it. My family really liked her as well, and I was happy to have found someone who loved me for who I am and not what I have. Everything was going great in the beginning. But our marriage began to have trouble after around the 2 year mark, I think. We had moved back to my hometown shortly after our 2 year anniversary because of the business and my dad wanting to retire. My wife had a job in the city, which she had to leave for this to be possible. I thought my wife was okay with it, and I asked her several times if she was, and she said yes. I think initially she thought she'd be okay with it, but then she couldn't adjust to it. I get it. Country life is not for everyone, but that does not justify the way she acted out. After around 6 months of us moving to my hometown, she began to complain about how she wants to move back to the city. I told her that's not possible because I had already taken up a bunch of new responsibilities. She also started to complain about us being too involved with my family. By that, she meant all the time we spent with my parents, my two brothers and their families, who also lived in our hometown, but we obviously had our own separate places. And that she's tired of all my family drama. Now, I'm not going to lie, there are some problematic things in my family. My two brothers and I sometimes have arguments about the business. We also have a stepsister. My dad had a kid out of wedlock before he married our mom, who has a troubled life. To protect her privacy, I won't get into details, but I'll just say that she has some financial troubles and dad has been bailing her out of trouble her whole life. This is also a matter of unease in the family. I know we're not perfect, but I still love my family, which is why I don't regret what I did to my ex wife. Coming back to my marriage, I guess she started to resent me for a lot of things. She kept saying she missed her job, which made me feel really guilty. She was also very vocal about hating the countryside, which, to be honest, was hurtful to me. Things were getting too difficult to continue, and we decided that she'll get a part time position at her old workplace and live in the city and our home. She worked from Monday to Thursday and came back on Friday mornings. I know it doesn't sound like a very healthy solution to our problems, but at that time, I was just too fed up to care. Definitely a very short term solution, though, because after only a few months of our arrangement, I began to have my suspicions regarding her. She started staying in the city for a full week, at least twice every month. At home, she was more annoyed than ever. She kept saying she's happier in the city than she could ever be here, and I could sense a disaster incoming. Her birthday was on a Friday this year, and she said she had to work. I tried to convince her to be with me, but she said she couldn't. Like a hopeless fool, I decided to give it one last shot and show up at her work with flowers on her birthday to surprise her. But guess what I found when I went to her office? The receptionist told me that my wife only works 2 weeks a month, and this wasn't a working week for her. I mean, I was expecting a disaster, but not this elaborate lie. She had been coming to the city every week, but apparently only worked for 2. Where was she the remaining time? What was she doing? I knew the address of the apartment she rented in the city and decided to show up. I mean, I was paying for that damned apartment, and I deserved to know what was going on. I knocked on the door, and guess who opens up? My ex, of course. Fully dressed up, hair and makeup done, wearing sparkly heels. Clearly, she was just about to go out for her birthday and was expecting someone. Seeing me, she just froze for a second. She tried to gain her composure and asked what I'm doing here. I told her that I went to her work and I know she's been lying to me. She asked me to calm down and said she can explain everything. I told her I had no time for whatever lies she had to tell me. Just when she was about to say something, the elevator dinged and guess who walks in? Her boss. Suited up with flowers and a champagne bottle. We saw him before he saw us. He stepped towards my ex's apartment, looked up, saw us, and immediately stopped. It didn't take me a long time to understand what was going on. In the heat of the moment, I walked up to him and punched him straight in the face. At least he had the dignity to look a little ashamed. I took one last look at my ex and her boss standing there in the hallway and left. On my way down, I contacted the building management saying I needed the security footage outside the apartment. I was paying for the apartment, so that wasn't very difficult. I went straight to my lawyer in the city and asked him to file for divorce as soon as possible. I called my ex and told her that she better clean out the apartment and that everything she had in my home will be out in boxes and donated unless she picks them out in a day. She started to cry and begged me to forgive her, but I hung up on her. I have no sympathy towards lying adulterers. I knew the prenup protected my family assets, and there was nothing else I cared about. The building management got back to me in a few days with the security footage, and I had proof of my ex's boss coming in and out of the apartment, and even footage of them kissing outside the apartment. Enough proof for an easy divorce. Pretty straightforward until now, but this is where the real mess starts. Even though the prenup protected me from paying alimony, my wife begged me for financial support because she couldn't live in the city with her part-time job. I refused completely, and that pissed her off. After our divorce, she took to Facebook and started posting intimate family details regarding me and my brothers and even our stepsister online. She made sure to mention the family business and even lied about a lot of things. This got a lot of attention and even some press coverage. My family was worried about the negative impacts on our business, and I tried my best to convince my wife to refrain from such childish behavior, but she refused to listen. After around a month of annoying posts, I had enough. My parents were really bothered by this, and I couldn't bear to see all the hard work they had put into this business go to waste. I asked my ex to stop one last time, and when she denied, I decided to go forward with the revenge plan. I emailed pictures and videos of her and her boss with the dates to every family member I had in my contacts. I made sure to send several copies to her coworkers that I found on LinkedIn and HR department in particular. Long story short, both she and her boss were fired for hiding a workplace relationship, and the general scandal my emails caused, and her family refuses to speak to her or financially support her. I don't regret what I did, but my ex is saying I ruined two careers forever and that she might become homeless now. AITA doing what I did? Some people are saying I am to blame for making my wife quit her job and move to the countryside with me. I just want to say that I didn't force her for anything at all. I asked her several times if she was okay with doing that, and she always said she was. I couldn't have read her mind to understand that she wasn't comfortable, could I? She was free to tell me her preferences, and she didn't, so I think that's on her. I am in no contact with my wife, so I can't tell you what she's up to these days. Sorry to all the people who have been asking me. The last time I saw her was at our final divorce hearing, and I prefer it this way. Also, yes, she has taken down all the Facebook posts, but some damage has been done. My family is particularly upset about my stepsister's problems now being out in the open because that's something all of us had kept very private deliberately. I'm not at all going to name my business, so please stop asking me. I have already said we're in the dairy industry, and that's all the info I'm willing to share. Also, I've gotten some questions about why I didn't commute from the city to our hometown if my wife could do it for her part time job. It's a 4 hour drive, and in the winters, the roads are often too dangerous to drive because of snow and ice. My wife was only commuting twice a week. It's practically impossible to commute daily. Also, I wanted to be closer to my family. Unpopular opinion, but ESH. Your wife obviously sucks for cheating on you, but being such a wealthy person, I don't think you can ever imagine just how traumatizing homelessness can be. You're not paying alimony, which is fine because you got cheated on, but getting her fired and humiliating her in front of her family members and coworkers was too much. NTA, she deserves every bit of it. The woman was literally meeting her lover in an apartment you were paying for. That is disgusting. I'm glad you got both her and her boss fired. They needed to face the consequences of their actions. Julia, 25, female, and I, 25, female, have been friends for years, and we both like fashion a lot. Julia is a self-proclaimed style dictator and often says my style is boring, but I like it, so I don't care. She's now in her TikTok era, her words. So she's been buying lots of clothes to fit this aesthetic. I think the colorful vibe suits her, and I can tell she feels really confident. I compliment her whenever we go out, and she always appreciates it. As for me, I have been on a no buy since January. It was one of my goals for 2022, and I'm really proud I've stuck to it. Recently, I have rediscovered a love for my skinny jeans. I find them really comfortable, they go great with tall boots, and they keep my legs warm, which is something I struggle with. Well, Julia hates them and doesn't make much of an effort to hide it. She's obviously allowed not to like them, but her remarks got tiring after a while. I started avoiding wearing them around her to avoid having to hear about how they're chuggy and ugly. Yesterday, I met up with a few friends for sushi. Julia doesn't like sushi, so she said she'd sit this one out. One of the guys invited us to his house for board games. He posted it on his story, and Julia DM'd him asking if she and her sister could come. We all said yes. The first thing Julia commented on when she arrived were my jeans. I laughed it off and changed the topic. Later, someone started talking about dinosaurs, and Julia said skinny jeans were also prehistoric. I again changed the topic, but was starting to feel self-conscious about my outfit. After several comments about my skinny jeans being ugly and unfashionable, I tried to make her drop it by jokingly saying, "Just because you can't pull them off doesn't mean they're ugly." I thought the conversation would end there, but instead, she got upset and started screaming at me for being an inconsiderate and insensitive bitch. And how dare I fat shame her in front of everyone? She locked herself in the bathroom with her sister chasing after her. Basically, Julia thought I meant that she couldn't pull them off because she's fat. I was horrified she would think that, so I went to apologize that it came off that way and that it wasn't my intention. She yelled at me that it was a bullshit apology and to leave her alone, and that being a skinny bitch, I'm not, doesn't give me the right to be fat-phobic. I decided to go home to avoid spoiling the evening for the others and because I felt bad for hurting Julia. My friends were saying I shouldn't have left and that she overreacted. I messaged Julia to apologize again and now I'm blocked. I genuinely thought it was obvious that I was referring to style and not her size. I also would never be able to pull off some of the things she wears. I have my own body image struggles, so I would never dream to comment on anyone else's body. AITA? NTA, and you have got to stop trying to make her feel better, apologizing and not wearing what you like because of her. She is not a friend. She's a bully who threw a tantrum because she can dish it out, not take it. Believe me when I say this. She will take and take from you and never give back. She seems very self-centered and a drama queen. Trust me, I had 2 friends like this. Notice the had. They bullied, mocked, and made me feel bad for everything until I had enough. Listen to your friends. NTA, she can't take the criticisms that she constantly dishes out. Her commentary, consistently centered only on other people's sense of fashion, dictates extreme insecurities of herself. She expresses herself through her clothing, which is great, but she's constantly tearing you down and won't stop about your jeans, like anyone cares. You apologize and explain yourself, and she calls it bullshit and resorts to calling you a skinny bitch. Rethink your friendship. One comment sent her over the edge, while you've had to deal with a barrage of them to the point you altered what you wear around her. I hope she can find someone to talk to because right now her shallow superficiality is overshadowing her behavior toward her friends. My parents were separated for decades, but continued to attack one another verbally through their friends and acquaintances, often putting me and my siblings in the middle of their ongoing feud. As the eldest, I was often the one most caught in the middle. My parents pretended to be NC with each other when they weren't fighting via their lawyers, but each would often contact me to just trash the other and then expect me to deliver their toxic messages to the other person. This went on for many, many years. It was exhausting. Periodically, I would lose it and go NC with one or the other of them. But eventually, I'd relent and get back in touch because they needed my help with some practical matter or because I wanted my children to have some kind of relationship with their grandparents. And the cycle would continue. My mother recently became very ill and went downhill quickly. I took her into my home and was her caregiver until she died. Until the end, she was very angry with my father, and she explicitly told me she never wanted to see him or speak to him. She became very agitated at the thought that he might visit her and made me promise that I would not discuss her illness with him or permit him to see her if he tried to visit. In spite of my best efforts to keep my mother's illness a secret, as I had promised my mother, my father eventually learned through some mutual acquaintances that she was dying. He then contacted me demanding that I allow him to visit her so that he could achieve closure because she passed away. I explained that she did not want to see or speak to him and that I needed to honor her dying wish. He became furious with me and started yelling and insisting that a final meeting between the two of them was the right thing to do and that I was a bad person and a bad daughter for standing in the way. I told my father that my mother's death was not about him, that I was sorry he would not be able to achieve the closure he wanted, but that I would not be allowing him to come into my home to upset my mother in her dying days. In my mind, it was not my decision to make. It was my mother's alone. My only job was to keep her as comfortable and peaceful as I could. My mother passed away a few days later. My father never achieved the closure he wanted. He is still angry with me for not persuading or forcing my mother to see him when she was dying. I think if he had wanted closure, he had decades to work it out with her before she became ill. AITA? Based on what you say, NTA. Also, your father's anger is very telling. It was never about your mother for him. Even his closure is all about him. Good for you that you honored your mom's wish and prevented yet another drama. My suspicion is that he wanted to have one last dig at her when she was in such a vulnerable position and couldn't fight back. NTA, he had his entire life to get closure. Instead, he chose it to talk shit about her and put you and your siblings in the middle. She explicitly told you as she was dying that she didn't want to see him or talk to him. You were carrying out her wishes. That's kindness, I might add, that a lot of people wouldn't have done since she put you in the middle of their arguments too. He's angry with you because he didn't get his way, so he couldn't have the very last word. I guarantee you'll become the next target of his vitriol because he sounds like a miserable human being.